we can capture this for folks to share later. So again, I know people are just popping in now, so I'm going to give it another minute, and then I'll give those directions again briefly. So for those of us who missed it, for those of people who missed it, I'll let you know. So give us just 1 minute here, and we'll get started. Oh. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. It looks like we've got close to 40 people online now. So again, one quick thing. You do have the ability to chat publicly. So if you have any information that you'd like to share about the information that we're talking about today, please feel free to pop a question in the chat window or offer that information. Or if you have any questions throughout, we have everybody muted except for the hosts. So you'll have to, if you do have a question, you can write it in the chat window and we can communicate it there. We're doing it that way so that we can manage the number of people that are on today's topic. And then one of the four folks that are on, the four hosts that are on here will communicate those chats. So with that being said, thank you all for joining us today during these trying times that we're dealing with right now on this topic that is important to many of you or all of you, and that is that is tools for hosting public meetings and engaging your communities online. My name is Jim Price. I am a program manager for Sustainable Pittsburgh. And we have on the call today three other people that you'll hear from. Kelsey Black is our communications coordinator with Sustainable Pittsburgh. And then we are joined by two folks from the Congress of Neighboring Communities, or Connect as they're more commonly known. And that is Allie Walker and Joellen Marsh. Thank you all for joining us today to talk about, to dig in a little deeper on some topics, but generally speaking, this is going to be a fairly broad brush overview of a lot of different tools, not really a technical tutorial on any of them. So we look forward to you sharing information, and we'll talk about the ability that if you do know quite a bit about one of these tools and you're willing to share your knowledge with other folks, we'd love to hear about it. We're trying to share information as rapidly as possible. Folks are doing in the region to deal with this crisis, and just to also be better at public engaging in the future. So we're going to, I want a brief overview for those of you that are familiar with Sustainable Pittsburgh. You probably know about the Sustainable Pennsylvania Community Certification. That is a program that we run jointly with the Pennsylvania Municipal League, in which we measure sustainability of municipalities throughout the state. We also have a professional development group that we work with here in Southwest PA. We see our footprint as the 10 counties of Southwest Pennsylvania. And that is that professional network, the Sustainable Community Development Network. And then we have a number of other programs, two of which you probably are particularly interested in, and that are doing a lot of work right now to help small businesses around the region and to get information out to folks as quickly as possible and to make those connections. Sustainable Pittsburgh is a 501c3 nonprofit that is been in operation for more than 20 years. And it is our mission to create a more sustainable region. So with that being said, I'm just gonna let you know some of the things that we're gonna talk about today. I am gonna give a really brief update on the right to know law as of 8 o'clock this morning. We're gonna talk about the spreadsheets that we have that are available with almost 100 public engagement tools that are available to folks so that you can see what kind of tools are available and what might work for you. Obviously that's an overwhelming number. We're not going to go anywhere near touching on all of those. And then Kelsey is going to talk briefly about crisis communications and what is the best way to kind of frame your communications plan. And also she's going to talk about social media a little bit, how you connect with folks, and what are some best practices around connecting with folks on social media, and what are some good things to know related to that. And then Joellen is going to talk about online public meetings, and she's going to focus on the Zoom platform because that is something that they are familiar with and something that you're using right now. That's what we've been using as well, and we found it very successful. And then we're going to talk about some other ways to stay connected with residents, including survey tools. Allie's going to talk about Savvy Citizen, which is a tool that municipalities have been using, And then I'll talk about some other engagement tools that are on that list that are very widely used. And we have a number of people that we know who use those, and we can share that information with you as well. So that's the outline of what we're going to talk about. Just to give you a brief idea of what's been happening with the right to know law. There is actually a law being that is in the Senate bill as of this morning at 8 a.m. anyway. Senate Bill 841 is in the House Rules Committee, and that would give a more solid backing for having not requiring a physical presence when it comes to a quorum vote and some of the other rules around public meetings. So that would help alleviate that. As of right now, the Office of Public Records gave a webinar, and I think they're going to do another one, but there's a lot of information related to that. And someone from our team will be adding that. Kelsey has added some of those links directly into the chat box. So if you want to copy and take a look at those, the first one being the Senate bill, and then the others are some links to the documents related to those. The general gist of the guidance from the open records training that they did, the webinar that they did, is that if you have an issue that you can push off, that is you're not legally required to consider it because of the planning code or others, you should probably push that off if you can. If not, if there are things that are more legally pressing, then it's okay to do virtual meetings as long as you are as public as possible about it, that you make sure that everybody is able to hear what is going on the online meeting, that you share the information in advance whenever you're having a public meeting. The only exception with that being that you have that it's an emergency session dealing with some very timely emergency declarations. That's the only time that would be. And of course, I should have prefaced this with, this is advice from them. This is not legal advice. This is just general guidance that we're receiving and hearing about. And I'm sure a number of you have already heard much of this advice. We know a number of municipalities that have already hosted these meetings. And Joellen will give you some more information related to how you should do that and some of the kind of key things to note when you're doing public meetings, especially on Zoom. If you use other platforms, some of the information will be relevant, some of it won't. And you also must make it available for public comment. So in this case, we have the chat open to everyone. That is something that they recommend, but you can go into more detail with that when Joellen talks. And if you need more information on that, by all means, click on those links, go to the webinars that are available. Those are better resources than my 5-minute talk about this, so I think you'll get good information there. The other thing that we wanted to share, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is the public engagement database that we have. This is thanks to Sustainable Jersey, and Kelsey just put a link up in the chat box for everyone. So it's viewable by anyone. So if you click on the link and you can look at this this huge database of, well, not huge, but there's more than 100 tools in it, or about 100 tools in it. And it's with a basic description of how much it costs, what does it do, and some examples in some cases of who has used that. Because we did take it from Sustainable Jersey, we've adapted most of it so that there's not anything that's not relevant to us. But some of the examples might still be New Jersey examples. And in other cases, we've updated them where possible, where we've had the time to do that. And then just before this meeting, Blaze Badway, who's our new intern here at Sustainable Pittsburgh, added a new tab to that field and put in a whole bunch of links for best practices on each platform or some of the more popular platforms. So if you're not sure how to use it, or if you want a little tutorial on what it actually does, that's a great way on the following page to take a look at what are the best practices. And to that point, we sent out an invite offering technical assistance because we know lots of folks maybe aren't familiar with these platforms, or maybe they're struggling to figure out how to deal with this new reality. We partnered with Connect. Connect has joined us in offering that technical assistance. So if you are in interest or in need of technical assistance on any of these topics and you want to explore some items, whether it's using a Zoom meeting or setting up a Google form or what have you, things we'll talk about, please, by all means, if you'll, that link that's in the chat now that says Google form for requesting assistance, please fill that out and send it to us, and we'll do the best we can to link you up with somebody, whether it's one of us or whether it's somebody else who's done the work locally, who knows about it. And to that point, we also are calling on volunteers. So if you are someone who knows about some of the topics we're talking about, let's say you've used Google Forms, please, we encourage you to also go fill out that request. You can, or fill out that form offering to be a volunteer. It would be a huge help for us to know who we can turn to, who we can point people in the direction of. We know a few people, of course, but if we had more people that would fill out that form and help us talk about some of these topics, or to help support other municipalities or communities that are doing these things, we very much appreciate it. And you can set exactly on that form, it asks you how long you can spend. If it's just a couple hours a week helping somebody out, that's enough. That's something that's very useful for us. And we're also asking that folks, if they can do it after hours or on weekends, if that's the only time you have available, but you're really knowledgeable about one of these things and willing to help, please fill out that call for volunteers. That would be an assistance to everybody who is on this call, and for the other folks that are hearing from us. So with that being said, I am now going to hand this over to Kelsey, who's going to talk to you a little bit about crisis communications.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Kelsey Black, and I am the communications coordinator for Sustainable Pittsburgh. I am excited to share some communication best practices and strategies in light of COVID-19. I know as municipalities, social media and comm presence may vary from place to place. So hopefully wherever you find yourself today, you can gain at least a couple of new resources or ideas for your own communication plan. So today, I'm just going to briefly talk about what crisis communications is defined as, communication best practices and social media strategies. And at the end, I will be sharing a list of resources and tools that I have personally found to be helpful during communication rehaul during this time. So first of all, what is a crisis? A crisis is best defined as a series of event that requires careful attention from management. And where crisis communication comes in is when an organization effectively manages and addresses that said crisis. And usually it is on a micro scale that's more internal. For example, if an organization's reputation or perception is at stake. However, what we're finding right now with COVID-19 is that we are in a situational crisis on the macro level that really affects everyone, every organization, every person, just on different varying levels. So as defined by crisis communication, there are 4 types, and some of this vernacular you might be familiar with in the world of insurance. There's act of God, act of man, act of God made worse by man, act of man made worse by God, and we'll just go over those a little bit. Act of God, that's definitely something you may have heard with insurance. It's referring to natural disasters like floods or earthquakes or tornadoes. And COVID-19 has definitely been defined so far as an act of God. Act of man, on the other hand, is when a person or a group contributes to a crisis or creates a crisis either by action or inaction. As you can see with one example being the Deepwater Horizon 2010 oil spill. act of God made worse by man, well, we're seeing that right now when people who are ignoring the health guidelines set by the CDC and the World Health Organization and even local governments, and not doing their part to flatten the curve, and instead furthering the impact of the virus. And act of man made worse by God, that one's a little bit more nebulous to define, but one example is the expediency of climate change. As scientists have told us that we have like X number of years to sort of make positive changes. That is something that is something to consider. And in crisis communication, there are 3 phases. I'd say that right now we are still in the first phase, which is stopping the bleeding, assessing the situation, formulating key messages, monitoring and responding. The second phase being winning hearts and minds by being authentic and creative and providing value. That is something that a lot of municipalities that we've talked to, at least, have been focusing on by electing a person to be their spokesperson. We heard from a municipality earlier today where their mayor has been doing a lot of Facebook Live videos and a lot more just general outreach in order to win more trust and put a face to the name behind the city or the area. And that has really been providing a lot of reassurance to communities and to audiences as they're able to sort of be able to like have that face to the name of their community. And then the third phase is restoration of operation, providing lessons learned and sharing community stories. And ideally, when the first 2 phases are done in an open and effective way, this third phase can go relatively smoothly, provided that that trust and rapport that has been built continues to be cultivated. So one major tenet of crisis communications, you can't control facts, but you can control process. So we can't control the fact that we are in a global pandemic, but one thing that we can do as communicators, which we are all communicators in just different functions, is to talk about process, especially when people have no idea what's going to happen next. Just being able to communicate, okay, here's the issue that we're facing, and here's steps 1, 2, 3 that we are going to try to do to fix this issue or at least address it. And a communicating process really brings a lot of reassurance to people and builds that trust, which is very important in a crisis situation. Authenticity is a huge part of this, being reassuring and personable, and electing that voice of your organization or municipality is very vital so that you can have that trusted face and trusted voice to talk. Providing value, there's a lot of extraneous information going out right now, and making sure that the communication that is put out is true and also useful is extremely important right now. And one way to guide this direction is to ask, what is something that we are uniquely able to provide or assist? What can we answer for our audiences or communities? And having that as sort of the guidepost can really help eliminate unnecessary information. So in regards to social media best practices, when we've spoken with some municipalities, they have, some of them have taken some of their non-essential employees and added them to their communications team, just to give their employees a new task and also make their communications and social media a little bit more robust in these times where it's almost like 24/7 communication. So if you don't have that ability, that's totally okay, because there's some tools that are out there that are really great for helping manage social media and communication in general. one thing I totally recommend is a content calendar that helps to create sort of that consistency and that voice that can help hold you through weeks or months, whatever your period is, so that you have a little bit of planning. One thing to note in a crisis is to make sure that if something happens internally or externally, that you pause your scheduled social media posts. Earlier in the COVID-19 situation, there were some airlines and travel companies that had scheduled posts that totally were tone deaf in the light of what was happening, and their social media manager must have forgotten to turn that off or something, and they were posts about like, oh, the best time to get away is now, and that's definitely not true. So just be cognizant of controlling that calendar and pausing things in case something comes up. So there are some great paid sources like Hootsuite and Sprout Social, as well as some free in-platform ways to schedule social media posts, like through Facebook or Twitter directly, or through Buffer. This study was taken last month, so everything is a little changed because everyone is on social media a lot more now than they were just a month ago. But the best times to post for social media on both Facebook and Twitter, the best day is Wednesday, and that's across basically all social media platforms. The second best day is Friday. The worst day is Sunday, and second worst being Saturday. And best times, granted, again, everyone's using social media a lot more now, so you have a little bit more leeway in this, but 11 to 12 is usually people's lunch break where they allow themselves to go and check their messages and see what's going on. And you can have more information about that on the link that I shared on this page. That gives the times for LinkedIn and Instagram as well. So if you are sending mail blasts through email, according to MailChimp, the optimal time for government emails is between the 8:30 to 10 a.m. window. The best day being Tuesday, second best is Thursday, and the worst days are Monday and Saturday. And I just found that to be interesting because it's always tricky to figure out when people are checking their emails. And here, I don't have more time to go over all of these things, so that's why I wanted to include them as resources. But a lot of municipalities are creating Facebook groups or as their business page, joining Facebook groups as their community. And that's a way to share information and keep up to date with the needs and questions in their community. Another way to do that even more directly is through Facebook polls, and that is a link to how to do a Facebook poll. A lot of people are doing Facebook Live with their appointed person, be it their mayor or a communications director, and Facebook Lives are really great sources to answer people's questions in real time. Another way to do that is through a Twitter chat, which is basically having an appointed hashtag, and people can engage with you via that hashtag. It's not like a live chat, it's as much as people just using your hashtag and talking. Kind of one example of that is with the Me Too movement, how that initially began. That was when everyone, the hashtag was created and the conversation grew through using that hashtag. Two little things, I love using Canva. It's a free, although there are paid versions, website for design. If you need to make anything really fast for social media or emails or anything at all, it's great and anybody can use it. It's very user-friendly. And Unsplash is a free, high quality stock photography website that I also highly recommend. Great pictures for content or whatever you might need it for. And then if you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to me. I will include my email in the chat as well. And I'm happy to help with any questions that might be happening. It seems like there might be questions in chat. No. Okay, I'm going to throw this to Jo Ellen. So thank you all so much for the opportunity to share a little bit with y'all.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jo Ellen Marsh. I work with Connect. I recently took over as program director for a new pre-arrest diversion program, and in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, have switched very quickly over to helping people figure out some technology issues. So that's what I just really enjoy doing. I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit about how we're starting to think about public meetings, things we've been hearing, and things we think are just helpful to keep in mind in general. If you've been on my trainings before, I apologize if this is some repeat stuff, but hopefully you guys learn some new stuff. So I'm just going to share Tess DeJong, who's one of our program coordinators. She has helped me put together this little guide. So I'm going to share this with you so you guys can just see. All right, so you should be able to see this right now. So what we've done is basically just talked a little bit about different functions. This is a preview of what we would be talking about in our normal webinars. So we're gonna have one next Wednesday at 2 p.m. if you're interested, and I'm sure Jim and Kelsey can get that information out to you guys. We have been using Zoom. So we're not using Zoom because we have partnered with them or anything. We've just found that it's a really easy tool to use, as Jim said earlier. There are plenty of other things, platforms that you can use. And if you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat. It's on this document. But if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to talk to you about those things and let you know any insights that we've found from either our experience or hearing about other people using these platforms. So the biggest thing that we've been hearing about lately is Zoom bombing. Have you guys heard about Zoom bombing? Is that a thing that you guys, okay. So a little bit mixed. So there's a thing called Zoom bombing, which is essentially modern day prank calling. People will find a open meeting, so there's no password on the meeting, and they'll go in and they'll basically do everything they can to interrupt the meeting and act inappropriately. So they'll start drawing things on the screen. They'll just be trying to figure out any way that they can get around the security features that the host has put in place. One of the big ways that people prevent that from happening is by using passwords, by not publishing links, by doing those kinds of things. However, if you're trying to host a public meeting, those suggestions just aren't possible, which means that if you're looking on a lot of like the, how to prevent Zoom bombing, a lot of the things that you're looking at are not going to be applicable to hosting public meetings because it really does have to be public. As we talked before about public comment, there are some ways where you could host a meeting without taking public comment during the meeting. So some people have talked about posting on Facebook, hey, 3 days before, we're looking for public comment, here's the agenda, email us your questions. That's one way to do it. That makes it very difficult sometimes to include public comment on different things that are happening during the meeting. It's definitely possible you can do that. If you want a more interactive meeting though, there are a couple other things you can do. Mostly that's around controlling who can participate in the meeting and how they can participate in the meeting. So if you're using Zoom, we've got a bunch of tips for how to do that. If you're using another platform, it's the same sort of thing. So look at who can share the screen, look at who can talk and who can show their video. Almost every platform has the option to force people to mute themselves or to not be able to show their video anymore and to be able to remove them. For any meeting that you're hosting, whether it's a public meeting or whether it's a smaller team meeting, I really recommend having multiple people share the hosting responsibilities. So you could have a co-host. So right now, Allie and I are co-hosts on this along with Kelsey and Jim. So that means that if anybody started causing a problem right now, we could remove them. It also just really helps in general to be able to respond to things. So if I'm talking right now, I'm not looking at the chat. But I know that because Allie and I have talked before, Allie is there monitoring the chat. So if any of you have questions, she can respond to those right away. And it just kind of allows it to go more smoothly, and it allows the speaker to not be interrupted by having to stop and check the chat and then go back and forth. And Allie also knows that, you know, she can get my attention or chime in at any time if there is something that that needs more direct talk than just what's on the chat. The other thing about hosting meetings online that we have to think about is there's a major issue with equity and accessibility. So in some ways, having online meetings makes them more accessible. There are plenty of people who, you know, work several jobs or they have responsibilities with kids, and so they're just never going to be able to make it to an in-person public meeting. However, if you do it online, a lot of people can sign on from their phone. They can do it while they're getting kids ready for bed. They can work it into their schedule. So it increases accessibility in a lot of ways. However, it does decrease accessibility for people who, for example, don't have any access to the internet or don't have good quality access to the internet. That's more of an issue in rural areas for sure, but also places that where a significant number of your residents maybe are older and just aren't used to using the internet. So there's the question of whether they can get on. Most platforms, you have the ability to be able to use a dial-in number for your phone. So you don't need the internet to access these meetings, but you still have to be able to tell people what that number is. And that's where it gets difficult in some cases, because if you're publishing this on Facebook, and for example, you know, my grandmother doesn't use Facebook, so she would never see those things, but she goes to every public meeting. So she's relying on other people to call her and let her know about those things. So really encouraging people to reach out to other people in their network and let them know about this stuff. And then there are the people who are going to be at your meetings no matter what. So you'll definitely see the same people who are regular faces at your previous meetings. They're going to show up at these meetings too. That's the kind of thing that we see. But really just finding a way to communicate and make it as easy as possible for people to sign on. In terms of Zoom, we've been looking at Zoom meeting versus Zoom webinar. And one more thing about just meetings in general, I really recommend using your camera. Even if you're a participant, it's really helpful to use your camera. It helps me stay more engaged. It helps, I think, people feel more like they're in a room full of people rather than just on a conference call. And Zoom isn't as good as in person, but I think there's a lot that having that video component can bring to a meeting. In terms of Zoom webinar versus Zoom, so if you are a Connect community, we can help you with some of these things. So Connect has access to this, and we're happy to set up a Zoom webinar or a Zoom meeting. I think for public meetings, Zoom webinar works better, just because it takes care of a lot of those issues that we're concerned about with Zoom bombing. So it prevents, no one else can share their screen unless they're what's called a panelist. So you could put all of your council members on as panelists, and then everyone else is an attendee. So they can ask questions with a Q&A. They can raise their hands so that you can go to unmute them. But otherwise, they won't be able to participate any other way than Q&A and chat, which is helpful for a lot of reasons, just to be able to control the flow of the meeting. So you can see there are different options for that. If you have any questions about this stuff, I'm not going to go super detailed into these things. This document will be available to all of you. And like I said, we'll be hosting another thing next week. And I'm going to finish up. But before I do, I just want to talk a little bit about the idea that we are trying to translate the functions of what we're doing in person to online. And sometimes just saying, okay, we're going to have a meeting online. It'll be the same as meetings in person. You have to think about the things that you just automatically assume are happening in person. They don't necessarily automatically happen online. So if you're looking around a room and you're usually gauging the room by looking at people nodding, you can't necessarily rely on that. So figuring out ways for people to type yes into the chat, or to use the thumbs up button on Zoom, or the yes button, like different ways of translating what you are used to getting in person to using it online. Some things are actually easier online. I know I've been at several council meetings where I imagine the people running the meeting wish they had a mute button to be able to mute the people who keep standing up and talking when they were asked not to. So there are things that you do have that are really helpful. And I think we're also learning a lot about ways we can have in-person meetings better by how we're getting used to having them online. So just kind of think through a lot of that stuff. If you're asking for public comment, you can adapt it to online. You can either ask people to submit comment through the chat, through the Q&A function of whatever you're using, or you can do the same thing. Say, we're allowing 3 minutes for public comment. I'm going to unmute you for 3 minutes. And at that 3-minute marker, I'm going to mute you. So you can just give those heads up to people. And we're finding that every council is doing it differently. Every council has different needs, but these are just some general guidelines. And I will pass it off to, I believe Jim's next.
Yep, thank you so much. I just wanted to add one thing that is really useful on that document that they created. If you do decide to go with Zoom, that at the bottom of that document, there is a list of how you should, like recommendations for how you should set the different settings that are in the program. It can be a very useful thing to know. And because it can seem kind of overwhelming when you see how many settings are available on Zoom. And there was a question that came through during the end of your talk there, Joellen, about what level of account do you have to create co-hosts. And I just went ahead and posted that for everybody to see and sent that out. So that you can't, it's any level that's paid that's available. So really quickly, I'm actually going to do a Zoom poll. Oh, it says I'm logged in from another device and I can't activate my Zoom poll. Well, that is interesting. I guess none of you are seeing the Zoom poll, and you don't have access to the poll, do you? Joellen, do you have access to the poll, or?
This is Kelsey, I don't.
Weird.
I do. I don't know how I got that.
I also do, Jim.
Can you see if you can set?
I can launch it. Do you want that to happen?
Yeah, can you do that?
It should have gone out.
Okay, great. So there's a poll just asking, I want to find out, generally speaking, some contact information. What kind of contact information you have as a community? Do you have a solid percentage of phone numbers for all of your residents? Do you have a good number of email addresses for all of your residents? Just to get an idea of what people have available to them. And I think that if you understand that in your own community will really help guide how you interact. And I think especially as we talk about some of the things that we're about to talk about, one of the things that we should also note that is a challenge with any of this and has been a challenge. We actually had a really good conversation with one of the people who took us up on the technical assistance is how do you get to the folks that don't have good online access? How do you get to the folks that that maybe can only call in because they don't have access online and different things along those lines. So it can be a challenge, and it's definitely a challenge when you're talking about social equity. So, and that is something that we focus on here at Sustainable Pittsburgh. And so we're working and looking at solutions. And I'll talk a little bit about that in one of the other programs when I talk about the next topic. So that there's no great solution to it, at least not that I know of. If anybody does know of some good solutions to that issue, please share that with us. We'd love to know how we can better connect with folks during this difficult time when you don't have, when all people don't have good access. So to that point, maybe people have had a chance to answer the poll. Can you post the results?
Jim, I have a notification that some aren't seeing the poll.
Oh, okay. Did anybody see the poll?
I don't think it's coming up. Maybe stop sharing your screen. That might have something to do with it.
Okay. Let me, I stopped sharing my screen. Now I'll try to share the poll.
I ended it. Relaunch.
It came up
people
for
seeing it now?
me. Did anyone else?
Yeah, I see it.
I
Awesome.
can see it, but does anybody else see the poll now? Okay,
Cool. Great.
looks like everybody can see it now. Yeah, if you want, okay, well then, if everybody can take a second, thanks. I didn't, couldn't share a screen at the same time. Lesson learned.
People are starting to take it.
Great. Let's give it about 2 minutes here. Give people a chance to click on it. Once we get a good percentage of folks to click on it, we'll report back how it is in different folks' communities, how often, how much what kind of contact information communities have.
If you're thinking about using polling, it's actually really fun to watch all of these come in. We've gotten 19 votes just in 55 seconds here. So it's a really fast way of getting that information.
Yeah, getting a feel. And have you played with it? Because the Zoom webinar version is, my understanding, the polling function is better on that as well.
Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah, webinar just has a lot of really good functions that I haven't explored yet.
Okay. Yeah, this is fairly simple. The polls, for those of you that are considering using a tool like this, it only really allows you to do multiple choice questions, and you have to pre-populate them. I don't think there's an option for other, because it basically wants to give you a nice little graph at the end. I think that's probably enough time. We probably didn't get everybody, but if we got a number of people, you could share the results.
Okay. Can people see the results? I should be sharing.
I can't see them. Funny, I don't know how that happened, but if anybody could take a screenshot of that so that we can capture it. Can you read out the results? Because I can't see them.
Sure. Do you have email addresses for your residents? It looks like over half said they have. Oh, here we go.
Well, yeah, the number is what percentage of the residents do they have was the question.
Yeah, so 52% said they have less than 25%.
Okay, well that's good information. So email notifications aren't going to be that effective. How about for the phone numbers?
Phone numbers, so 34%, 10 people said they have less than 25%, about a quarter said they have 25 to 50%, 14% of our attendees said they have 50 to 75% of phone numbers.
Okay.
10% said they have 75% or more.
Okay. And how about the last one for the
66% say that their community does not use a reverse 911 system.
Oh, okay.
34% say yes.
Yeah, there are a number. I know that I can see Mary Ellen on here, so I know that, and Mary Ellen uses it, Aetna uses it. And I know there are a number of folks that do. So if you want to learn more about that, we can connect you with folks. I'm not putting Mary Ellen on the spot, but if other people want information about that, we'll find some folks to share more information about reverse 911 systems, which are a very effective way at getting emergency type notifications out to folks. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen again. And someone chatted. What was that last chat?
The question asked was, how is a reverse 911 different than a robocall?
That's a very good question that I actually don't know the answer to. Is there someone I could unmute, Mary Ellen, if you would feel comfortable answering that question? Can you unmute that, Joellen, or unmute Mary Ellen?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, everybody. It's hard for me to say because I don't know what a robocall does. I do know that the reverse 911 is awesome. We pick exactly what it says. We tell it what times to go out, and it calls everyone. You actually, if it doesn't get an answer, it automatically calls back 2 more times. It's kind of like a robocall, but we have Swift Reach, and it's only $2,500 a year, and we just did a really big COVID call 2 days ago. Our mayor recorded it, and we told about the food bank and how you get those, donate to it or sign up for food and all kinds of things. It's, and we're going to do the same thing we did 2 already regarding the census, because we have a very high percentage of the population that do not have social media or internet access, a lot of elderly or lower income families. So I think it's awesome. People really, really like it here too. We had a lot of compliments from the call the other day, just to kind of boost people up. But I think it's great.
Yeah, and one thing, Mary Ellen, that one difference is robocalls typically don't leave messages on your machine. This does leave a message on your machine. Is that right?
Yes, it does. Yes. And it's
Yeah.
really nice. Like, I have it calling my work cell phone so that I know that it went out, and I can do that with my police chief. He's not a resident because it relies on the 911 system for the phone numbers. So we didn't even have to go get all the phone numbers. They get them from the 911 center based on your zip code. And then we advertise on our website and everywhere that you can get text now through it, and you can register your cell phone. So a lot of our families now get it on their home phone and their cell phone.
Great. Yeah.
Really good. $2,500. You can use it as many times as you want.
Yeah, that's all really good information. Thank you, Mary Ellen. And a couple notes, and I think you kind of answered some of them, is reverse 911 only on landlines, and you confirm that you can sign up. Then when they do the search, it's not when the 911 search comes in, it's not there, but they can sign up for it on your website. Is that
Yes, yes. And people who need help, we have a staff member, people call here, or they'll come in and she'll help them sign up for it. Because a lot of our elderly do have cell phones, but aren't able to go on our web page and sign up. So it doesn't even take 5 minutes.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. Appreciate it.
Sure.
And then Hannah from Allegheny County Health Department noted that if you want the recordings that they use on the county robocalls, the pre-recorded ones, that she will get you that file. Is that, yeah, she just email her at hannah.hardy@AlleghenyCountyUS.us. So,
Yeah.
and she put her email address in the chat function there. So, all right. I'm just going to leave you unmuted, Mary Ellen, in case you. But you can mute yourself if you want to too. All right, I'm going to hop into. Thank you for answering that poll and going through that. How are we doing on time? Yeah. Oh, whoa, we're really late. Okay, I'm just going to cover this very quickly then, so that Allie can talk to you a little bit about Savvy, the Savvy Citizen tool that she'll talk about. But there are a lot of great tools, simple survey tools that you can use if you want to get more information. If you do have email addresses, or if you do, you can put these forms up on your website. They're generally free or inexpensive and very easy to use. You can set these up in minutes. We've used Google Forms. Actually, we use Google Forms for that form that we talked about earlier for signing up to volunteer to assist folks, or for requesting assistance, because it's very simple. Anybody could really answer these forms. And some have more functions than others. We actually use SurveyMonkey for some of our programs, for our shops program, because we get really nice information from it. Just to give you an idea, you get information back after people answer questions in really nice, simple formats that are this is not you designing these are just in the system. After you write the question, it makes these nice little images for you. So if you have some questions that you want to ask folks about, for example, we asked people, does a business use a fan to reduce the use of air conditioning for one of our sustainability issues? And 73 people answered, and you see all that information right there. more than 50% of the populace of the people that were surveyed did, just to give you an idea of how easy that is to use. I also want to mention very briefly, we are going to have a webinar next Thursday at 1 p.m. and we're going to talk about community response teams, or what Lawrenceville United is calling a buddy system. Lawrenceville United, and the reason I bring it up now is because they essentially created the technical side of this by simply using a Google form. They set up a Google form to sign up volunteers to help community members. They put that right on their website, and they send it out via all their email addresses that they do have. They have more than 200 people signed up to volunteer. And then the more difficult part is actually finding the people that are in need, because oftentimes if they are immunocompromised in this current crisis, or if they're elderly, or they don't have a way to find out about these things, it's a little more difficult, but they've been navigating and trying to figure out ways to get that outreach out there. Cranberry is doing something very similar. It was born from their Snow Angels program that they formed over last winter to help folks who didn't have the ability to, or also maybe disabled or elderly, or have problems getting their own lawns, or their own driveways and stuff plowed off. So they created a community response. So they took that idea and just changed it into acting very much as a buddy system does. So they have a page on their website. They've been announcing it on their they have a digital billboard out in front of their community. And I know that Triborough, so Mary Ellen, and I know you guys are setting up a community response team as well with the Triborough district, or there's some work being done in that realm. And so that's another opportunity. We're going to have a more formal discussion and a much more in-depth discussion about that next week. And it's as easy as, and the forms and the release forms that are needed just to cover liability are already pre-designed, and I can send those to anybody if they're interested as well. If you're interested in setting this up right away and you don't even want to wait for the webinar, because we understand that people are in need, and acting fast in this time is important to make sure that we're helping folks. So with that being said, I am going to turn it over to Allie so she can talk to you a little bit about Savvy Citizen.
All right, so I will be brief, but my name is Allie Walker. I am the Regional Recycling Research Coordinator for Connect, but as COVID-19 has changed most people's lives, I've also kind of transitioned a little bit, and I've been looking into different ways to facilitate and coordinate communication. It's been one of Connect's longstanding goals to coordinate communication better with their members, and then facilitate communication between members and then their residents. So it ties in really well. It's a really nice segue, thank you, Jim, from the reverse 911 calls. This is along the same lines. So we are still doing research. This is just one of the apps that we found, and we've decided to put it out there and let people know what options they have. But Savvy Citizen is something we found that a few of our municipality members have been using, and we've heard great things. So they're an app, and as you can see here, there's this sample calendar from Connect's page. You can log on, and it is a paid account as a municipality, and you can put out all your events or all your emergency notifications as well. In a similar manner, you can choose when they go out, for how long, etc. And they will all populate on the back end or on the front end of that for your residents into a calendar. So this is great for Connect because if all of our members had this, we could just pop up our calendar and take a look at what's going on, and we have a really brief snapshot of what is going on in our community. But I'll leave it mostly at that. We are going to have a skill share on April 14th, which is next Tuesday at 1 p.m. for people who are interested. There will be testimonials from our members who have been using this app, as well as 2 reps, I believe, from Savvy Citizen itself to answer any pressing questions. So this could be an option along the lines of reverse 911. I don't believe it does phone calls, but it does do apps, emails, and text. So just another way to keep your citizens informed, especially during the time of COVID-19.
Great. Thank you so much, Allie. Whoop, I'm missing a slide. Oh, I went too fast. So, and actually, before I go into this, these other tools that are available, if anyone has any of these community engagement tools that they use themselves and would want to share information about that, please fill out that form or just throw it in the chat that you'd be happy to share information about Savvy Citizen, or you'd be happy to share information about any of these other tools that I'm about to talk about, or Zoom, if you're willing to assist folks using any of these things. I know many of you are very, very busy dealing with the crisis, so I understand if you don't have time, but if you do, and you're willing to share that with other folks, that's an incredibly helpful way for us to get information out there. So please share that information in the chat if you do. And if you want us to dig deeper on any one of these platforms, we know on almost every one of these, we know people who use them. So if you want us to get a qualified user to share information with you, we would love to do that for you and provide more information and be a resource for you in that way, so that you don't have to go seeking out that help. And we'll plan another webinar and we'll get that information out as quickly as we can. And to that point, we will send out information about the Connect webinar that Allie is doing on Savvy Citizen as a part of the invite for our webinar next Thursday that I mentioned, talking about the Buddy system and the community response team. So we'll also include that in there. And I know they've been including our webinars in their invites. So we'll make sure that that information gets out as widely as possible. And then just a note, these are some other tools that a lot of folks are using, just to give you an idea. These tend to be more custom tools, or but fairly simple to use. Some of which I mentioned, the last three on that list, GovPilot, CityBase, and CityBot are all offering free access to either their entire program or portions of their program. And they're very useful tools for communities to add to their systems. For example, doing online permitting. If you have people that are trying to get permits right now, but your office is closed. Those types of things, or paying fees and other things along those lines. Those are back-end tools that you can really start transitioning a lot of your stuff to online. And that's really good for economic development and in general. So beyond this work, well, we're gonna struggle to get out of the depression or recession that we're in right now because of COVID. These are tools that you can make things easier for people to do business in your community and to get information to folks. So again, please, just to cover a couple of them really quickly, Everbridge, if you have signed up for the COVID announcements from Allegheny County, which I have, and I get text messages from them, and I've also downloaded the app, that is Everbridge. Happy to see if we can get someone from Allegheny County to talk about that, if that is something that I've not had a chance. I tried to reach out to them, but I only did it yesterday, so I didn't really give them enough time to respond. But if there's any information, we can try to link that up with them and see how maybe you guys could work with them, or at least they're using Everbridge. Civic Plus is they design websites, but they also do a lot of other things related to that. And they've been buying up actually a lot of other organizations that are doing similar things and putting those into their programs. And they have this whole suite of tools like Civic Ready, which will send push notifications out to folks. They do Civic Clerk, which is an agenda tool that you can create agendas online and have that all available through an online tool. So there are a number of really nice tools out there. GovPilot is more of a back-end support system. We talked to a couple municipalities that were using it. But that also is how they're using response forms. It's something you could create that community response team using those forms. And those tools. CityBase is very similar in the free online forms and the permitting process and along those lines. And they're offering free online support. And then of course, 311 services are something that is a very useful tool. And when you have a more automated system. You don't have to do as much work responding to folks, and it, as opposed to, you know, getting a call, writing it down and transferring it over to something else. It's easier just to have something like a city bot, which will do that, which will do a lot of that work for you, and send in emails back to folks in communication. So those are really general overviews. If you look at the list that we sent out as well, there's a number of other programs in there. We certainly are not recommending one over any others, but we are showing which ones are offering free support and service right now during this time. So if you wanted to try one out and you didn't know whether you wanted, you know, what you were going to do, it might be a good opportunity to check some stuff out. I'm seeing a few chats come through here, so I just want to make sure we're not missing anything. Oh, that also, Allie, this is the local company, Savvy is a local company. That's a really good point. And so support your local economy. They're a local company. You don't know where these are located, so
Breaking up a little, Jim.
Oh, okay.
If you want to repeat what you just said.
Yeah, I was just mentioning that Savvy local, you saw them come up in the chat. Savvy said it's actually a local company, so please support your local companies. That's great. I did not know that. And Andrea from South Fayette Township also mentioned the Civic Plus, and she'd be glad to be a resource for that. But I can let you know. So if there's any interest in finding out more about those different programs, please let us know. Either email us or in the chat. But with that being said, we are at time, I think, or past it a little bit. But we're happy to answer questions. If anybody needs to go, obviously, please do. But if anybody else has any questions, we don't have a meeting starting for about 10 more minutes on this same platform. So if anybody has any questions, we would be happy, and I'm sure everybody else would be happy to answer them. Give it a minute here. And please, we're getting a lot of thank yous, and thank you for attending and for doing the good work that you folks are all doing. I know lots of you are working really hard to manage during this difficult time. Please do feel free to share any of the resources, whether it's that Connect document on our Zoom, or whether it's the public information, the public engagement document that has all the different tools, or if you want to share those, if you have communities that you think would need public assistance, or not public assistance, but assistance from us, technical assistance from us, please feel free to share that information as well. And or sign up, please sign up. We need volunteers to help out. So yeah, with that being said, I'm not seeing any questions. So we very much appreciate you attending, and this will be recorded. We'll send this out as well as the slides. And I want to thank Joellen and Allie from Connect from joining us. And of course, our rock star from Sustainable Pittsburgh in Kelsey. Thank you all for participating today.